Hi, welcome to the Update Podcast. We didn't have time to think of an actual intro, so this is our intro. I'm Amar,
And I'm Usman Manzur.
and today we're going to be talking about Palestine. You may have heard of it. You may have heard about what's going on, but today we're gonna talk about what's happening and cite factual information, and just give you the update on what's happening.
Yep.
But before we
Hope
get
you
into
guys
that,
enjoy.
I want to say a few things. A majority of the information that we're going to talk about today, if you're watching to this on YouTube, it'll be linked in the description. And also, any of the information that we say in this video is either A, cited from reliable and credible sources, or B, a reflection of our own personal opinions. Don't get angry. Don't get
Yes,
angry.
please.
I'll have to turn the comment section off, but that's okay. That's fine. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't clicked off the video yet, hit the subscribe button and the like button. We'd really appreciate that. That'd be
Yes, we
really
would.
great. Since this is a new channel, YouTube really likes to make sure no one can see it, especially if it's about a topic like this.
Very unfortunate.
So, yeah, we're just going to get right into it. Before we do that, roll the intro, which doesn't exist yet, so just pretend. Okay, so we're just going to jump right into this. You may have heard about what's happening in Palestine, right? Usman, I know you have, right?
Yep.
One, two,
All
one.
over my Instagram feed. It's really like it's like dehumanization.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad.
It is. It's unfortunate.
However, we're gonna go into like the facts about what we
Mm,
see. We need to assess like what's going on, what's causing this,
absolutely.
what's America's role in this.
Yeah.
Also, let's take a look at the history of like what
Oh yeah,
caused
for sure.
this.
We're gonna kind of dive into the history of how this actually started because by the way, a lot of people think this is something that's been going on for like thousands and thousands of years. That is false
Definitely is.
information. That is not true. This has been going on
Exactly.
for under 75 years. This is not something that is old and been going on forever. This is something relatively recent in comparison to say the existence of, history.
And the Holy Land, the whole people often associate the Holy Land and these two states together, which it's a misconception.
Mhm.
The state is very separate from the Holy Land. These like people of these religions,
Mhm.
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam
Mhm.
have been living and
Oh yeah.
coexisting on those lands, especially like Jerusalem for hundreds of
Oh yeah, for
years.
sure. Prior to what's happened, like within the last 75 years, Jews, Christians, and Muslims all lived, especially in Jerusalem, all lived peacefully
Exactly.
together for so long before that. I remember reading an article where it was like people of all different religions literally celebrated like every different holiday because they were so close with people, like not even like regarding their religion. Like
Exactly.
it's everyone's holiday. It doesn't matter what religion you're, everyone's celebrating.
Yeah, and I don't want to sugarcoat anything and say that it was all peace and
No,
everything for the
it
past hundreds
wasn't.
of
It
years.
wasn't. But like compared to what it is now, it's not like people were just
As
at war,
yeah,
literally at war. It wasn't like
as we
that.
see in history, these big superpowers when they put their influence onto these smaller countries, and they leave their mark, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
exactly what happened here.
So we're gonna start. So we kind of had a bit of an intro there, but we're gonna start with some information and sort of build off of that. So
Let's do it.
actually, let me ask you first, Simon. What? Because I'm not much of a social media savvy person. I use social media, but I'm not
That's my
really
job.
on it constantly. I'm more on
Yeah,
Twitter versus you're more on Instagram. I guess if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
What have you seen people doing in terms of like how they're responding to what's happening in Palestine?
So in terms of like my perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I see lots of different accounts that they're not trying to guilt trip you, but
Mm-hmm.
they're resorting to honestly guilt tripping because
Yeah.
a lot of people have ignored this.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of celebrities that are ignoring it, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of side taking where
Yeah.
I see one side. It seems like almost like the extremes.
Yeah. People
This
get
is how
really
it always
emotional
is.
about it, and they're just like,
Exactly.
yeah.
And sometimes we have to realize that sometimes the best approach is to not get emotional about it and
Yeah.
just take
Absolutely.
the most logical approach about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in terms of what I've seen on Instagram, it's a lot of sharing these like unfortunate scenes and pictures, and it's not always going to be. It's they're oftentimes showing videos that you wouldn't see on other like news places and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, for
That's
sure.
one
Yeah.
interesting thing about Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see all those news articles, but you see these videos of these families struggling and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
underneath all this rubble and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sad, but that's what I feel like Instagram provides.
Mm-hmm. But I want to say that I feel like someone like me, I actually discovered this issue what's happening. I discovered what's happening in Palestine through Instagram, like specifically through Instagram stories. That's how I discovered what's happening. I remember waking up like a few days ago, doing the normal things, checking Instagram, and just seeing all of this like that's happening. And so I looked more into the issue. I not only went through Instagram, I then did my normal research of going through Twitter, finding articles from credible sources, New York Times, the Washington Post, a bunch of people, Associated Press, etc. And what I found is it's a lot like what you see on Instagram stories and stuff like that is just like, it's imagine trying to look at something through a keyhole.
Yep.
And that the only perspective of what you see is happening is just that image that you saw through that keyhole.
Yeah.
That's what the Instagram stories are, and then what's actually happening is like opening the doors as to what is happening.
We're only getting such a limited scope of what's going on, and
for sure,
honestly, that's the scary thing about it. But also, it's like let's look at this in more of a positive light, that compared to some, like when these conflicts were happening back in like a couple hundred years ago, there was no report or coverage or anything about this, or even
like compared
notification of it to the other side of the world, or even to other countries, or even cities.
Yeah, that's true. Literally, if something was happening within the borders of one country that had full like lockdown of their country, they could quite literally constrict how the information, like where the information was going. If they didn't want anyone else anywhere else in the world to hear about it, they could literally stop people from leaving, and just no information could get out because it physically could not. Now we have the internet, and no matter how hard anyone tries, it is impossible to stop it. Eventually, people always find out. Yeah.
That's true.
People will always find out, especially if something like this, it will always happen.
So speaking of perspectives, let's go into like those articles that you saw. I wanted to look at like how different articles, portray what's the events of what's going on.
Absolutely. So before I start talking about the most recent events, I want to go back a little bit, like not 75 years, but just like a week, to explain to you like how this sort of flare up happened, because this I don't even want to call it a conflict, because it's not it's like a struggle, the oppression, an oppression, how this happened. So about a week ago, right? This is the day before Ramadan. It may be, at least in the United States, it was the day before Eid. Sorry, it may have been different in different time zones, but at least in the United States, that's what the day was, and I believe it was the same actually in Palestine. But people were actually, I need to go back even further than that. So it was
a little bit before.
It's a little bit before that. So let's go back up like a fair amount of time, like maybe a year or two. Everyone's familiar with Israel, the country, right?
Yes, of course.
I feel like a lot less people will be familiar with Palestine. You may have heard of it, but you may not actually know like what it is or where it is.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people will look at like where Palestine is and just look at, like, hypothetically, if there were no drawn names or borders on where Palestine, Israel is, you would just say, oh, that entire area is Israel. Like, interesting. If I'm being honest, that's what I thought for a long time until not very recently, but a fair amount of time before.
A lot of it happened on purpose because, for example, like on Google Maps or Apple Maps, Palestine was like removed.
Yeah, Palestine is gone. You can go on your phone right now if you're listening to this on YouTube. Go to Apple Maps and look for Palestine. It's pretty much not there.
And when you search it up on Google, it's not considered a nation or a country. It's considered the state, and it's a state of Palestine, and they consider it as like the Palestinian territories.
Yeah, even though it's technically recognized by the United Nations as even the United Nations already recognize it is as, it's not actually a part of the United Nations, it's a permanent observer territory or something similar to that.
Yeah.
Nice avoiding that, United Nations. Anyway, so we're gonna go back to Israel and Palestine, right? So Israel, the whole concept of Israel, or like the way that the government was doing stuff, is they're trying to invite as many people in to move to Israel as they possibly can, right? Yeah. But obviously, over time, more people, what do you need to house more people? You need more space. Yeah. They need more land. And it's not that they were running out of land. It's just, I guess they wanted Palestinian land. Mm-hmm. And so over time, because they can't legally, like, how do I explain this? You can't just go into another country and just take it, if that makes sense. Without declaring a war. Yeah. That would a war going on is very different from what is supposed to be it's what is qualified as going on right now, which, I mean, yeah. I guess, missiles being fired at people isn't, a war. But it's a war that people don't want. It's a war that people just want to turn their heads away from.
Exactly. So that's why it was, in America, it's not considered a war.
Yeah. So what basically happened is the courts in Israel basically just started evicting people from their homes in Palestine. Yep. Right?
It was called settler colonialism.
Yeah, settler colonialism, exactly. Yeah. They started evicting Palestinians from their homes inside of Palestine, kicking them out, and then putting settlers from Israel into those homes, or sometimes even knocking those homes down and building new homes for settlers to live in.
Let's also note that they did so with their soldiers and their army. And
By the way, if you're wondering, if you're wondering why that was even happened, is because Israeli police are actually going in defending settlers who are pretty much illegally there in Palestine and have taken Palestinians' homes.
From the perspective of a Palestinian who's living in, a perfect example, Sheikh Jarrah.
Yes, I'm aware.
That area, that people, if you're a Palestinian there and you're forcibly being kicked out, you're obviously going to defend.
And keep in mind, by the way, as a Palestinian, you don't really have access. You may not even have access to clean water to drink, electricity, plumbing, schools. So many things we take for granted. So keep that in mind.
Sentiment and the one major resource you have in that, that safe neighborhood or whatever. Yeah, like that unified neighborhood with your other.
It's really just your community, because Palestine has no army, no official armed militia. There's no one to defend you. It's you and your neighbors.
So that is it. Kicked out like that.
There's nothing they can do. What are they going to do against the Israeli police? They're going to do nothing. So anyway, that happened specifically in the neighborhood. I'm terrible at pronunciation. How do you say it again?
Sheikh Jarrah.
Sheikh Jarrah. In that neighborhood, Israel wanted to evict 12 different families from their homes.
Exactly. Yep.
And they it pretty much happened. It did happen in a way. It happened.
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was planned to happen in May 2021. May 2021, and actually, I guess it did happen.
As far as I'm aware, let me double check. As far as I'm aware, I read in the Washington Post that it actually did happen.
It did happen,
and that's what really started everything. People are obviously going to be upset that, hey, my entire neighborhood just got evicted from their homes illegally, and now we're homeless. Now we have no water, no electricity, and now we have no home. That was the only thing we had. Now we have no home. The only thing we have left is our community and our religion. That's it.
So yeah. One important thing to note is that this was obviously an ongoing struggle, ongoing oppression, but it was exacerbated by this scenario that happened with Sheikh Jarrah. Mm-hmm. And that whole issue sparked this movement, and that's kind of where we are today. I wouldn't say that Sheikh Jarrah was the sole cause of it.
It wasn't the sole cause, but it was the spark from which the fire started.
The fire of this contemporary,
So keep that in mind, and now here's where everything starts to flare up. So keep that in mind. Think of that. You're a Palestinian, and that has just happened. Now pretty much the only thing you have left is you're going to go the day before the most important day in Islam. You're gonna go the day before to the mosque to pray. Okay. So most people, I would say pretty much everyone is familiar with the city of Jerusalem, right?
Yep.
Inside Jerusalem is home to many holy sites of many religions for Jews and Christians, and also Islam. Inside of the city of Jerusalem, is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the third most holy site in Islam.
Yeah.
So people are going there, right, the day before Eid, which is the most important day in Islam.
Yeah.
People are going there to pray, but a lot of people don't know this. Israel actually put pretty much a limit on how many people can go into the mosque at any given time, which was 10,000 people.
Yep.
Right. But obviously this is the day before Eid, and this is people, want to go there, so people start flooding in the, thousands, right? Well over 10,000.
Right. They didn't obviously comply with what Israel was. Enforcing.
Yeah. So they go in, right? And obviously Israel's upset that people are peacefully praying. So what do?
Irony.
The Israeli police is this is the part that gets kind of blurry, because some sources are saying that people started throwing rocks at Israeli police, and some people are saying that the Israeli police is the one who started the conflict. It's hard to exactly say, but the general layout of what happened was basically people started throwing rocks at police, and I'm not sure if that event happened first or what I'm about to say happened first, but things just started happening rather quickly. And before you know it, people who are inside the mosque are throwing rocks at police, and police are entering the mosque and using stun grenades and tear gas to clear people out of the mosque, and rubber bullets. And as far as I'm aware, I believe I read in the Associated Press or the Washington Post, all the articles are linked in the description. There was also live ammunition used on, peaceful people praying inside the mosque.
And we see it all the time in history.
Yeah. And by the way, I see a lot of people on Twitter, as I was going through reading articles, in the comments, people are like, oh, why are people throwing rocks at police? People actually do carry rocks in their pockets for circumstances like this, so that way, they can't be obliterated by the police with guns. They at least have some way to defend themselves.
It's an interesting perspective, because what the Western media is trying to portray is, it's a lot of times it's like, obviously we know that the U.S. is an ally of Israel.
Yeah.
So we know that they're going to not necessarily try to victimize Israel, because they will acknowledge their many flaws and
as far as what I've seen, the United States has tried to sort of stay as neutral as possible, but still they just want to stay away from this, and the only reason I think what they've acknowledged as much as they have acknowledged is simply because it would look much worse if they did not say anything. If they just pretended nothing was happening, that would be worse than not saying anything. Granted, what they are saying is kind of interesting. I read that that President Biden had a conversation with the Prime Minister of Israel and said emphasized that Israel has a right to defend itself. But I really like what Representative. Let me find it really quick. It's interesting
that the interesting part is the picture, the picture that these people are trying to paint. Honestly, they're trying to say that the people throwing the rocks are the ones that are the oppressors.
Yeah, that really doesn't make sense.
That's what we're trying to look at. We're trying to look at how is this a convincing argument, and honestly, we're trying to look at the root of where is this like issue coming from. And another major aspect of it is the news and the articles and the major headlines, because when you look at when the first thing you see,
headlines are dulled down in order to be more plausible to every audience, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what news agencies, they sort of make their money from people reading their articles away. And that's not necessarily true for everyone, but that's a very important part of it.
They need to cater to as many people as they can, because that's their agenda. So
I want to emphasize this part really quickly. I really like what are you familiar with Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? The person who proposed the Green New Deal.
Yes.
The idea of saving the planet. Anyway, we'll cover that in a future episode probably. I don't even want to talk about that right now, but I really like what she said. She repeated the quote that President Biden said, that in his conversation with the Prime Minister of Israel, that Israel has the right to defend itself, but she highlighted that people are forgetting that Palestinians have the right to survive. She said that word for word in Congress. You can go look that up. I'll also link that in the description. There's a clip of that in the description right now. Go watch that.
I wanted to also, I wanted to build off that. There's a whole nother issue that's going on in our country, in our political party right now, is Democrats are facing some, what is it, like, not a rift in their party, but they're facing some division in their party, as some of the more liberal candidates are more, they're speaking out more about this, and some of the more not laid back, but I guess you could say the ones that
neutral, more centrist than leftist,
and the ones that are trying to appease the overall public more, such as Biden and Vice President Harris, they are staying more, reserved about this.
In fact, as far as I'm aware, I don't think the vice president has made any sort of statement whatsoever about what's happening, which is it's
a little bit shocking.
It's really, I feel like it's really is trying to be a play. It's like, no matter what they say, obviously, as the vice president and the president, no matter what you say, you could literally say anything and people are going to criticize it. But there's a difference between saying something that may be seen as controversial and then literally calling out when, genocide is happening. But it's unfortunate that I don't think they may actually say anything right now, or even if they do say anything, it would be rather neutral, simply because I feel like if they did say anything, it would be upsetting to a large portion of the population that did vote for them. And obviously, as president and vice president, your goal is to try and get reelected. I'm not saying that's their only goal, but that's a very big goal, obviously.
It probably is their biggest goal, if we're being honest. Let's take a step back with President Obama. He obviously a good president, but the same issue is his agenda and the things that he was tied up with in his office. He as much of a great person as he could have been, because we know he was a great people's person. You can try to be speak out on these humanitarian crises, but their biggest goal in that party, his job, is to get reelected. His job is to appease the public. That's his job, right?
Yeah, for sure. I actually feel like
you have to compromise some of the genocides and the bad things going on,
which is really unfortunate in a way. If you actually think about it, it's like a re-election over, trying to help people. It is kind of sad.
Exactly.
Oh, also, one thing I want to emphasize really quick, I know what people are going to tell me already. I know what people are going to tell both of us, is that we only see things from one side, and that no matter what anyone said, we would always go with the left. We're always going to support people like Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, people like that, and always be against people like Donald Trump, stuff like that. Two things. Number one, I will say, I think Barack Obama was a good president, but he still did very bad things, which I'm sure we can talk about in a future episode.
Very much agreed.
And obviously, I'm not even going to talk about what Donald Trump has done to this country. Somehow survived.
However much we do associate
how this country survived from that, I know not.
Yeah, we do associate ourselves with Democrats, and we can definitely outwardly say that.
Yes, however, but we're not going to blindly follow them. If they do something that is wrong, we're going to call it out. We're not going to blindly follow them off the edge of the cliff. And if they do something wrong,
that's the whole that's the whole theme of this whole podcast, is that we're holding people accountable, and we're just trying to keep.
We're going to tell you the factual information about what is happening, and it'll be pretty obvious about what's right and what's wrong.
What's right versus wrong. What's wrong, exactly.
Yeah. Like, if any individual, any politician from any side, a Republican, a Democrat, the birthday party, does that still exist? I don't know. If anyone says anything,
party,
we're going to call it out. But anyway, I feel like we've gotten a bit off topic. Back to Palestine.
Went on a little tangent.
So yeah, where were we? Oh, that's right. Yeah, rocks being thrown by people praying, and then the Israeli police force using tear gas on them inside the mosque. Yeah, so that happened, right?
Yeah.
And so now there's more direct conflict on a much larger scale. Now people are very riled up. It's like, we were praying, and now, in such a large crowd, things like that just happen. This chaos sort of erupts, especially when, it's just, people that have been at odds for a long time. Not necessarily, to clarify, when I say people at odds, I'm not saying Muslims versus Jews. I'm not saying that at all.
Very big misconception.
I want to emphasize that really quickly. A lot of people think this is a religious conflict. This is not a religious conflict. Religion may have a role to play in it, but it's not a sole religious conflict and nothing. That is not even the base of what is the problem here.
It's a border conflict, the national conflict.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
That type of stuff.
Yeah. So after that, things escalated rather quickly. And now we're sort of arrived here where Israel is, there's conflict going on, and now I don't really. We're not going to talk about.
Let's also make sure to include, after the protests that were happening, and we saw more, like what is it, the gun violence,
more direct conflict,
After that, we saw it escalate, as Ammar was saying. To missiles and bombs. That was the major difference over this past weekend that occurred compared to, I think it was like Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, where it was just rocks and tear gas, which is still bad.
Rocks and tear gas. Yeah, exactly. It like climbed the stairs of the warfare, and that's why we can call this warfare now.
Yeah.
And not only that, we don't even have exact numbers of
we don't.
The dead or the injured people, kids, families.
Speaking of what's actually happening, I saved some articles the other day, one of which is very unfortunate. So let me say this really quickly. I have two things to talk about. So apart from what is happening in Palestine, there's actually if you like us think that, hey, innocent Palestinians being killed because they're being evicted from because they were praying in a mosque, because
no justification.
Yeah, because things that are out of their control are happening. They don't deserve to be killed. Like, people, when things are out of your control, people don't deserve to be killed for that, obviously.
Yeah.
And if you, like us, think that, you are not alone, because there are actually protests going on all around the world. I'm going to name a few places where I've seen this, but one moment.
That's a whole other thing I wanted to address too.
In places like Argentina, there are thousands of people getting together. In Chicago, on, I believe this is May 16th, Chicago, there were at least 20,000 people gathered chanting "Free Palestine" in Chicago. Chicago, the United States of America, by the way.
I saw in New York. I saw
in New York.
London.
Yes, where it is in London. There's no exact number here, but I'm at least that you can look at the video in the description. Thousands of people in London are getting together with raising Palestinian flags, chanting "Free Palestine." In Glasgow, there are hundreds of people getting together with posters "Free Palestine." So many places around the world. People
Dallas was also another big one.
Dallas of all places. Dallas, the one in Texas.
Dallas is pretty democratic, and I'd say actually,
I know.
You'd be surprised.
I know, and I feel like there's a big Can I talk about that really quick? I feel like there's a big misconception about Texas, that the entirety of Texas is like pro-gun, pro-Republican. That's not true. I feel that's really just a stereotype. But anyway, we're going to talk about the problems in the United States later, because there are a lot of them. Yeah. Okay, back to my second point. This is so confusing. So yes, we really don't know about the exact death numbers and injury numbers. And what's made that problem even worse is on May 15th, it may have been the 14th, but at least on May 15th is when we got the news. Israel decided to destroy a building in Gaza that housed many news outlets, including the Associated Press
and Al Jazeera,
and the Al Jazeera
major
international news organization. Yeah, they destroyed the building. Now, I don't know about you. Oh, by the way, they did say that was done because there were people hiding in the building that were enemies to Israel, but they did not cite any evidence to that. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like just maybe it's not a coincidence that they happened to destroy the building that housed the news outlets criticizing them killing innocent people. What do you think?
Very coincidental. And it's I would say this, the more scary thing is how the US and other people reacted to this was very calm, and I would
Oh
say
yeah,
it
for
was
sure.
a very overlooking attitude,
Yeah.
and it was very questionable. And not only that, what I personally think is it was just another step in them in Israel succeeding in their
Oh yeah,
settler
for sure.
colonialism.
And
It's
the
just, yeah.
oh, sorry.
You go on.
I was gonna say there a lot of people did overlook what happened, especially when the news organization building was, turned into a pile of rubble. There are actually, surprisingly, I know this is gonna be crazy. There are some good politicians here in the United States. I know it's crazy. It's hard to believe. One of them we've already talked about, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, AOC. I'll just say that. She tweeted out the video. I think there are some other representatives and senators and just general people Bernie Sanders, somewhat. Several people. Not very many, but there are a few good people out there, right? Who are actually tweeting stuff like this out. I know Twitter isn't necessarily doing that much, but you may be surprised about how much effect getting news of what's happening is actually affecting people. And there's actually proof to that claim, because let me see if I can find it. One moment. Okay, I don't have it anymore. I think I saw it on an Instagram story, but I believe it was the alternate prime minister of Israel who called on Google and TikTok and Instagram and all those people to literally just start taking down posts about Free Palestine because of how much of an effect it's having.
Social media has a profound effect, honestly.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, the amount of people that are realizing what's happening because of social media is astounding. Like, I hear so many people tell me that social media doesn't do anything, it's all on the news. I don't know about you, but at least Gen Z is not, I'm gonna wake up this morning, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go read the New York Times. That's what I'm gonna do. That's just not, I'm sorry, that's not how this generation works.
Mm-hmm.
They may be out there, but it's not being read the same way as things on social media of our generation are.
If I'm being honest, personally, I would say that is for the better, and let me tell you why. Because when it comes to social media versus the news, it's about how quickly are you going to receive the very vital and important information that you need.
That's so true. Social media is practically instant
versus on the newspaper. And then there's also a negative side to this. What if what's being portrayed on your feed, because depending on the things you follow, what if that is going to completely alter, and for the worse, alter your state on, or perspective on this, and that completely puts you on the wrong side of the issue, because you saw that post and that's the only source of information you have for a certain issue, versus with a news article you get more information, you take in more aspects of the situation, right? You get to build your own perspective. I mean, there's a whole nother difference, or there's a whole conversation to be had about the differences between social media and the news. However, I would say in this certain situation and this oppression that's going on right now, social media has had such a profound effect.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It has been for the better.
Oh, honestly. Yeah, for sure. The amount of information that is getting out there because of social media, like, people don't realize how much of an effect social media is having. If the alternate prime minister of Israel has to go out of his way to try and get TikTok and Google and Instagram to take things down because it's having an effect on their oppression of Palestinians, that says a lot. That says this is actually doing something.
Exactly. And
when was the last time you heard
that's
a ruler?
Unprecedented.
Yeah.
That's unprecedented. I mean, in the past couple of years, we have been hearing about these leaders that have been saying, take down these social media platforms because they are a threat to our democracy. I put that in quotation marks.
Quotation marks. Democracy.
Right? And that just shows history's our contemporary history is rapidly changing. And I would say that might be a big factor in sparking change in this movement. However, how how drastic of an effect will these protests and like everything have if these leaders of these nations won't step up and try to make change. That's the real question.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna go over some more sad information now. So if you don't want to hear that, I don't know. I'll put a timestamp on the video screen. You can skip to that if you don't want to hear this, but it is something important and has to be addressed. So if you don't want to hear that, skip like now.
Trigger warning for anybody.
Absolutely.
Everybody needs to know.
So as of 4 hours ago, Globe and no, that's the photo. Excuse me. The news outlets are reporting as of right now, 212 Palestinians have sadly passed away due to the conflict, including 61 children. I don't care what anyone says. Children are innocent. There's no justification for killing children in any conflict.
Exactly. I agree. That's the completely sad story of the sad side of this whole story. And honestly, I'd say the even sadder part is how it's just being overlooked.
Yeah, it is being overlooked.
It's not just overlooked; it's being hidden by a lot
it's being hidden. Yeah,
news sources.
Yeah.
But
I honestly, would like to say really quickly, those numbers are from the Associated Press. You remember them? Their building was destroyed by Israel. Some in other news, President Biden has expressed support for a ceasefire in a phone call with the Prime Minister that was on Monday. So that was today. Although how effective a phone call is at actually creating a ceasefire, that's up for debate. I'm also it
might have been more for suppressing and appeasing the people, the Palestinian pro-Palestinian.
By the way, I forgot to say, if the president wanted to, he could end this conflict with a single phone call. He has the power to do that.
That's an interesting outlook.
Because the United States, I'm not sure a lot of people know this, the United States provides like billions of dollars to Israel in aid, quotation mark, which is really just military funding. Aid. Palestine gets no aid from anywhere, by the way. That's where taxpayer money is going to. It's pretty much funding weapons for Israel to use on Palestinians.
I saw an interesting a sign this on Instagram. It surfaced on Instagram. It said a pro-Palestinian sign that said "Your tax dollars burn kids alive."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's where I got the concept to look into some of that.
With the tax money and stuff, I saw this sign that said your tax dollars burn kids alive.
Yeah.
And it really hit home about, this is like the main source and this is a root of what's going on in the Israel and Palestine conflict. Yeah. People wonder all the time, why are there these wars and these complexities in the Middle East? And there's a major cause of it. Yeah. So that was just an interesting thing that really hit home.
And so, like I said before, the president he has the power pretty much to end this conflict with one phone call. Now, I would like to say, when it comes to billions of dollars, the president does not have direct authority over that. The only authority with that, the only people who have authority for that kind of money in the United States is Congress. Yeah. But the president still has substantial power over what Congress does, obviously. Yeah. Like, if the president even just barely threatened, like, hey, you need to stop, what you're doing, because we're the ones who are pretty much paying for what you're doing, and it is against our laws to pay for, innocent people being killed.
Genocide.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's not to say the president could, just turn the tap off, but he has significant power to influence how that happens, if that makes sense.
I think that's very important for every bystander and every viewer of this whole situation to consider, because a lot of people would like to say, when will this end? How will this end? Maybe it's I'm not going to say easy. Maybe it's more direct and at home than you may think. That's all I have to say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I hate to be the person to do this. I would like to clarify, we do have some bias towards the left. Like, we're going to be a pretty left podcast over this, and just to emphasize that a little bit, and I hate to say what I'm about to say, but just brace yourselves. The former Vice President Mike Pence sharply criticizes President Biden and calling his administration's reaction to the violent clashes weak and a weak stance. And
I did not really expect much more from
somebody
that supports and upholds racism, but I'm not too surprised that he will try to justify.
I feel like Mike Pence would probably Mike Pence would probably take any moment to criticize the new administration. So I don't think what he's actually saying here is sincere because he truly cares about people necessarily, being harmed. I feel like he's just taking any opportunity he can to, just criticize the new administration. Yeah, absolutely. And this is a moment to criticize the new administration. Obviously, letting genocide happen is a bad thing.
He's criticizing it for the wrong reasons because
absolutely.
He stands with Israel. So yeah.
And even in his statement, he didn't really talk about why it's wrong. He just talked about, how the administration is just horrible. So, that's just further proof of that. But anyway.
Baseless claims, but that's a whole nother
issue. So we're probably going to do a follow-up episode on this because, unfortunately, I don't see this conflict going anywhere anytime soon. Unfortunately, as much as I hope and pray that this ends peacefully.
As the events continue.
As this continues to unfold.
Hopefully, things do get to a more peaceful outcome. But as things continue, we will update as our name suggests.
No matter as the name suggests.
About what's going on.
No matter what happens, we will probably do a follow-up episode, or at least part of our next episode will probably be a follow-up on what happens. If it ended tomorrow, it's just like, what actually happened and how did this happen?
The implications this have, not even just considering the contemporary, but just the implications this has on everything, all the United Nations and everything is pretty big. So yeah.
Alrighty, well, we have pretty much run out of time. We're going on 45 minutes currently. That's probably going to be cut down. This will probably be like a 40 or 30-minute podcast if you're actually listening to this.
Yeah.
A few things to note. If you got all the way to the end of this and you're actually listening, thank you so much. I don't know how you listen to us without slamming your head into your wall or chucking your phone into your desk.
High school students talking about another humanitarian issue, and you guys still managed to listen. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you so much. If you're here, that really must mean that you actually care. So you don't have to do this. I don't want this to be like, hey, this is really sad and unfortunate. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's not what we're trying to do here. But we'd really appreciate it if you did subscribe and like the video because we really want more people to know what's happening, and we're doing our best to try and get people to know what's happening. And it's not that we want to use this conflict to put forth our own social media platforms. That's not what we're doing. It's just we want more people to know, and therefore we're going to... You don't have to subscribe or like, but we would appreciate it very much if you did.
We would not like to guilt trip you like a lot of the news articles like to guilt trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
We genuinely love, as this is our first episode, we should go over, we genuinely love talking about these social issues and everything going on around the world. And we love informing people about it. So the best way is if you guys share and tell other people about it too. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. We truly do appreciate it. If I do decide to leave the comment section on and there's no bad people in the comments saying how everything we said is awful and terrible, I'll probably be responding to every single one of you. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. The Update Podcast is brought to you by me, Amar, and
Osman Munzer.
Thank you very much for listening. Oh, really quick. Everything that we said is going to be from cited articles, either that or our own personal opinions. And you can find any cited articles in the description of the YouTube video, as well as some other information. And yeah, thanks for listening.
That should be all. Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Update Podcast.
See you guys.